Yesterday we saw the all-share index down 0.23%. Today we're seeing a movement upwards, a gain of 0.11%. What's changed in the last 24 hours?
Basically, the sentiment in the market is still very cautious. Today we saw the index closing up by 0.11%. The volume traded actually declined by 22%, and the value of trades appreciated by 27%. Overall, today the sentiment in the market still remained cautious. We saw that the banking sector dominated trades with the likes of GT Bank, Zenith Bank, First Bank, and Access Bank accounting for about 35% of all the trades today. The index actually showed that 33 stocks appreciated, 27 stocks declined, and 72 stocks remained flat. So overall, really, it was more of a marginal performance from the market today.
All right. What's informing sentiment? Because as you're suggesting, the banking stocks are the dominant stocks at the moment. That was the case also yesterday. So I think people are a little bit more confident about banking reforms within Nigeria. What about the other sectors?
I think generally people are just cautious about investing just for now because we've seen the end of the earning seasons for the banking sector, during which the banking index appreciated by over 4% during that period. Right now, some of those gains have been lost already. But I think the interview by the CBN governor earlier in the week actually gave some degree of clarification and clarity to the investors, and then we are relatively more we have relatively more information about how the asset management company is going to play out. He did mention that a recommendation has been made to the president, and we are expecting that based on recommendation to the legislatures, we should have approval for the board of AMCON probably before the end of the month. So I think generally investors are still they are just cautious generally.
Okay, your outlook for the equities market in general, some expect it to just remain range-bound for the rest of the year. What's your view?
Yes, in the short term, it would remain relatively flat, like we are currently seeing. But we think that in the medium to long term, there are some catalysts that should serve as a boost to the performance of the market. And for us, the key catalyst we're looking at would be the announcement of the board of AMCON, and then the release of the guidelines for based on which they would take up the TOSIC loans in the bank books. We also think that once AMCON begins operation, we should begin to, it should give the required platform for mergers and acquisition to begin to take place in the banking sector. And because the banking sector makes up over 40% of the index, once there's positivity in that sector, we believe that the index as a whole would begin to tick upwards. And also, there's also some concerns on the political side. We think that the way the whole political arrangement is handled with respect to the electioneering that is ongoing right now would actually be a key factor towards giving the required downside protection to the market.
Right. Let's talk about the corporate bond issue for UPDC, which was oversubscribed. Your comments?
Yes, we are not surprised that the UPDC bond issue was oversubscribed. Actually, all the bond issues, even by the various states that have taken place so far this year, were also oversubscribed. I think the market is awash with liquidity, and investors, on the other hand, as well, are also seeking very aggressively for outlets for high-yielding investment. And I think that the UPDC bond issue came handy for most investors, and then they used the opportunity to actually boost their asset allocation in terms of their fixed income exposure.
All right, let's talk about other bonds. UAC and Property Development Company trying to raise 15 billion naira through a bond issue, which was also 100% oversubscribed. Now, this one's particularly interesting because it's the first bond outside of the banking sector. As I said, banking stocks tend to dominate. So what do you make of it?
Yes, that's what I just mentioned, Lerato. In the corporate bond sector, yes, UPDC is the first non-bank bond that we are seeing in the recent time in Nigeria, and it was over 100% subscribed. It was oversubscribed by over 100%, and that is because there's so much liquidity in the market right now. Banks are yet to resume lending, and so there's much of liquidity in the market. Investors, on the other hand, as well, are they need higher yielding alternative. They are tired of receiving between 1 and 5% in their money market exposures, and so they're generally looking for high yielding alternative, and the UPDC bond came handy, and that's why investors pushed money in that direction. But overall, really, the UPDC bond issue is very attractive. There's a housing deficit of about 17 million units in Nigeria currently, and so we are convinced that they are able to deploy the funds appropriately to actually give value to investors. You also know that UPDC is listed on the stock exchange as well, and so investors stand to benefit from the appreciation from the appropriate deployment of those funds.